Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Kelly Theater and the set of Puffs. If you haven't seen it yet, it has a few more showings this week, so I hope you can come by for that. I'm Tim Borchers. I'm the president here at West Liberty University, and I'm so pleased today to have President Clyde Campbell and President John McCullough with us to talk about the history and really the legacy of West Liberty University. That's the theme for our day in our whole week of inauguration activities, and I can't think of two better people to talk about the legacy of West Liberty. They need no introduction, but I'll do so anyway. Dr. Clyde Campbell became president of West Liberty State College on November 1st, 1984. He had previously served as professor of chemistry and academic dean. He graduated from West Liberty University in 1953, serving as the student council president and was a former Mr. Hilltopper. I'll have to ask a question or two about that probably. Dr. John McCullough served as interim president 3 times and as president for 2 weeks, as I learned, in December 2015. He previously served as provost, dean of the College of Business Administration, and as professor of management. Both have served in numerous volunteer roles, and they've both given back so much to the university, and I'm really appreciative that they're giving back today to really tell their story. So telling their story to those of us in this room, but also to on video, so that we will have these recollections, we'll have these stories for years to come. So thank you both for being here. I gave them some questions, but they told me they're just going to wing it. So we'll see what happens here. So I have a few questions, and then towards the end, we'll turn it over to you if you wanted to ask some questions. And then there will be a reception in the Nutting Gallery after this, so I hope you can join us for that. So my first question is, what inspired you to pursue the role of university administrator and president?
Is this working? You were interim for three times?
Yeah. Didn't get it right. Didn't get it right.
With all due respect, you seem to have a hard time holding a job. No, I do want to say this, and I'm going to respond to Dr. Borchers, but I do want to publicly thank you, John, with the chaos that was in the upper level office here for so many years. The only calming effect I could feel was to know that John McCullough was the interim president and was holding things together. So we are indebted to you, and this little get-together is supposed to have an historical background. And John, you're such an important part of the history of this college, particularly during the last 10 or 15 years. I publicly want to thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Clyde. And I want to put this on. Is this working now? Is it working? Exactly as I wrote it. Exactly as I wrote it. So thanks, Dr. Campbell.
I left about half of it out. To answer, and publicly, I want to say congratulations, Dr. Borchers. We are proud and happy to have you as our leader. And to answer your question about, I had no thought of seeking the presidency, First of all, I love this institution. I would never have been able to go to college if West Liberty had not been here. I was able to commute from Warwood. Although the crush, the financial crush of $50 a semester for tuition, that's what it was. I paid $50 a semester for tuition back in the dark ages, but I had no ambition of being president. When the time did arise, I guess the main thing was it was a 12-month job instead of a 9-month job as a teacher. I was able to work 4 days out of 4 instead of 3 out of 4, but I had no idea of actively seeking the job. But when one point in time when Dr. Elbin resigned at the urging of a number of faculty, I applied for the job, and I just wanted to stay here. I never wanted to get out of school and go to work, so I just kept going to school, and that allowed me to do that. So I had no real concrete intent of seeking the presidency. It happened, and so.
This is working. Thank you. Clyde, and this isn't a love fest at all, but Clyde hired me in 1971. Said perhaps the biggest mistake he ever made, but he went through with it. But Clyde hired me. And remember that interview as if it was, I won't go through all of it, but as if it were today. And my role model was this gentleman. It was Dr. Clyde Campbell. I'm going to reference this several times as we talk for the next hour, but Clyde was my model for several simple reasons. He could be trusted. He was honest. What he said was the truth. And those things sometimes are lost. Those things aren't always present in institutions and in presidents. But this gentleman in Clyde's history, because he was a student here, certainly far exceeds mine. But this gentleman was he was my model. He was my mentor when I was a chair and a dean, and I will always be appreciative of that. As a kid, as a little kid, I wanted to be an interim president, and I knew, told mom and dad, I can see me in that role. Temporary, get in, get out. Absolutely right. Don't get blamed for too much, claim credit for too much. And my situation was different from. And by the way, that first time Clyde applied, he should have been. Everybody knows he should have been president. Should have been president. We had a gentleman here, rest in peace, but a gentleman who was president here for 14 years, and 13 of those 14, I think, wanted to leave, didn't he? Clyde pretty much had resumes out, but a good gentleman. My 3 presidencies were folks. One was a resignation by design, and the other 2 were resignations that were not by design. I certainly didn't seek that. Anything else, I happened to be provost on 2 occasions, and on the other 3rd occasion I was not. So mine was quite different. I was in that role because of particular circumstances, and I appreciate greatly that the Board of Governors had enough belief or faith that that type of appointment. But it was nothing, Dr. Borchers, that I sought at the time, but was there. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you. Let me add a historical note to John McCullough. Any of you have any idea the square mile area of Ohio County? It's about 10 miles wide. It's about 10 miles long. About 100 square miles, Ohio County. In 1777, Ohio County was still part of the Commonwealth of Virginia, not West Virginia, and had a square mile area of 1,477 miles. It extended from beyond the top of the Panhandle clear down below Tyler County. That was when it was part of the Commonwealth of Virginia. Over the years, it got cut up into smaller and smaller portions. But let me tell you something that was a little scary to me when I discovered it. The first elected sheriff of Ohio County, when it was still the Commonwealth of Virginia, was named John McCullough. Is that scary? That's the truth. Yeah, the first elected sheriff of Ohio County, when it was still part of Virginia, was John McCullough. So you have quite a heritage here, John.
Didn't even know it.
I'll have to add that to the list of trivia questions for people to answer at the next contest. Okay, my next question, we'll kind of look at this a couple different ways. What were some of the most significant challenges you faced during your tenure as president? Significant challenges.
My most significant challenge during my whole tenure as president was a school of business. It was, they had a dean, pushy, was in my office half the time, and things like this. They said, Dr. Campbell, we need computers. I said, John, you have one up there. And he said, no, all the students need one. I said, John, they're just toys. They're not going to be of any significance. Well, somehow he pushed me hard enough and pulled enough strings that he established the first computer laboratory on campus where every student had access to a personal computer. And so obviously, I'm kidding, this man was, I can't describe how supportive he was of my tenure as president. Now, obviously, I'm just kidding. He was so far ahead of the pack in wanting computers for every student, but I couldn't help saying that. In fact, during that time, for years, the School of Education was the largest school on campus, had more majors than anyone. This man turned that around completely and built the School of Business into the largest school on campus with more majors than any other major. So obviously I'm just kidding. But let me tell you, one of the most difficult challenges I faced when I assumed the office of president, and this is not too well known, I believe, I also inherited a $9 million bonding indebtedness on the dormitories. Dr. Albin had built a lot of dormitories, and when he retired, and when Dr. Chapman left, they both very graciously left me with a $9 million debt. And we were on the verge of, we're just making our monthly payments. And I decided we had to do something there. So we with L.A. Liberator A. Orsini, Libby Orsini, how many remember? What a great person. He was a business manager at that time, Dr. Borchers. I sat down with Libby and we calculated what level of occupancy did we need to maintain in the dormitories so that we were earning enough money to meet our bonding indebtedness. And it came to 85%. We had to have the dormitories filled to 85% to have enough money to come in to pay our bill every month. Well, we were far below 85% because it was a small industry in the village to rent rooms to students. I never had enough money to live in a dormitory. I always lived in a rented room uptown. And so I had to go to the village council one night and explain to them that we're changing the rules in terms of people living in dormitories. All freshmen have to live in the dormitories unless they're commuting from home. Everyone else has to, unless you're commuting from home, has to live in a dormitory unless you're a veteran, emancipated, married, or have health or physical restrictions. Otherwise, you have to live in a dormitory. Of course, the village was up in arms because a lot of people were earning a lot of money renting rooms. And I explained to them, we have to do this for a few years or there will be no one to rent rooms. So there were some angry souls, but I did escape that village council meeting with my skin, and we instituted those rules. And with Libby Orsini monitoring that, we were able to pay off that $9 million debt. And headlines on the Trumpet, the school paper, said essentially, you can live any place. Dormitory occupancy rose above 90%. Now, if you can figure that out, I don't know. Let me add one more little story, if I might. Of course, some students refused to leave their rented rooms, but fortunately, other students would rat on them and tell the dean of students that John McCullough is still living up in town. Why do I have to move in? And it was the dean of students' job to go get them and tell them they either had to move into the dormitory or seek another school. And the hard cases to crack said eventually he wanted to talk to the president, so they would end up talking with me, and I told them, I'm sorry, I can make no exceptions. You either have to live in the dormitory till we get our debt paid off, or I'm sorry, we'll write you, I'll do it personally, write you a letter to help get you into another school. Got to tell you one little story. Dean Frank Harrar, who was the dean of students at the time, came to me and he said, we got a case that there's a young man and a young woman. They're both sophomores. They are living together in a rented room uptown, and they said they can't move into dormitories. They can't. They have been together since high school. And he said, they insist on seeing you. So I met them. Lovely, both good students, and lovely young lady and a nice, polite young man. And they said, Dr. Campbell, we've been together since high school. We can't separate now and move into a dormitory. I'm sorry, we just can't. And I said, do your parents know about this situation? They said, no, they're sending us money. They think we're both living in separate dormitories. They don't know we're living together, but I'm sorry, we can't. Well, it was the end of the first semester, and I said, well, I said, I'm sorry, I can't make an exception. I cannot make an exception. You either have to move into the dormitories or leave West Liberty. So I said, we're going home on Christmas break, the semester break. I said, if you decide you want to talk some more, I want you in my office first thing when we come back after the first of the year. Otherwise, you have to leave West Liberty. First day of classes for the second semester, they're both in my office bright and early. 8 o'clock in the morning. So I invite them in, set them down, said, well, what did you decide? They both held up their left hands with wedding rings on them. I said, that is so tender, but I want to see some paperwork. And the young man said, I knew you would. He had the marriage license, a copy of the marriage license. And so they came to West Liberty. They both graduated together. And Joan and I still get Christmas cards from them every year. They were married, have a family. They live down in Maryland now. He had a very successful career, but I thought that little story might have been interesting. I'm sorry, it took too much time.
The president is a matchmaker. That's all right, Dr. Campbell. One thing, too, I want to, which is absolutely true, what Clyde said on the our computer lab and all that. When I went down the first time, what Clyde said about his response, well, those are just toys and trinkets and so on. And I thought, pardon me, I thought, what the hell? Our president, and then he said, I'm just joking, John, I'm joking. I know how important they are. But for a while, I thought, my golly, the president doesn't know the need for computers. And he did. Far and away, all three times I were there, and this is a little bit along the lines of what Clyde mentioned with the bond. By the way, Clyde, I think that was also paid off early, was it not? I think the bond, they were not just paid in full, they were paid off early. Major ones were what is always ongoing, but they were a bit more acute, were budgetary. All three times it was dealing with budgetary problems. One of the reasons for maybe the previous presidents leaving had to do with that. We were in the hole, we were in a hole significantly, and so it had to do with dealing with that, getting things back in the black a bit. Dr. Borchers, I truly think the toughest role decisions I ever had to make in a couple of those, two of those, were eliminating, terminating, because we had to cut payroll, had overexpanded, individuals who were quality people who I knew personally and yet had to make that particular type of cut. And I know in both situations, the HR director said, well, I know that, not that I'm red badge of courage, I don't mean that at all, but I knew the people, I knew them well, and I said, no, I'll be the one that goes to their office and sits down and tells them and explains to them. Didn't ever want to do that again, had to do it a second time, but that, I think, was the single most difficult thing I ever had to do, was sit down and talk with quality people, dedicated individuals, some of them individuals that I knew very, very well, and say, you no longer are employed here. These are the cuts we have to make to balance the budget, and you have to balance the budget as we go forward. We've got to return to some type of financial stability. So without question, it was the budgetary challenges every time that had to deal with. Mm-hmm.
Okay, now on the other hand, can you share a particularly memorable accomplishment or initiative from your time as president?
Want me to shoot one out, Clyde?
I have to.
Had a lot of them. There were a lot of them in his 11 years.
There were so many. Of course, the $9 million debt was a big thing, getting that cleared up. Another thing that I took a certain degree of pride in accomplishing is moving not just West Liberty, but the entire WVIAC, West Virginia Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, moving that into the NCAA. We were not part of the NCAA then. We were part of what was called the NAIA. I think that still exists. It was sort of the junior partner of the NCAA. And the athletic director at that time was Jim Watson. And Jim kept pushing me. He said, we've got to get into the NCAA. We've got to get into the NCAA. The guidelines and rules from the NAIA were pretty weak. A couple schools were having their own way, and I'll name them, Concord and Glenville. I told both those presidents they're starting 11 felons on the football field. The rules were not very tough, and they were having their way, and so they didn't want to move into the NCAA. And I have to confess, we had one sport which shall go unnamed that we were in which we were particularly strong, and that coach was here. He didn't want to go NCAA either, but what happened then is our baseball team had some success, so we made it to the NAIA World Series, which was held in Idaho. And that's expensive now when you think of taking a whole baseball team, flying its staff and coaches, flying them to Idaho, hotel, airplane tickets, food. And the longer you won, the longer you stayed. And so every day was thousands of dollars. We eventually it was a double elimination tournament. We eventually lost our 2 games and came home. But Jim Watson came to my office and he said, Doc, I want to tell you something. What did it cost us for that venture? And I really forget, honestly. It was a large sum of money. I'm going to say like $30,000, maybe $40,000. It was a lot of money we had to pay. He said, well, I want to tell you something. If we were in the NCAA, they would have paid us $50,000 to have gone out there and come back. I said, okay, let's go for it. He said, well, I'll work with the athletic directors. The President's Council was the board of directors for the WVIAC. I said, I'll work with the presidents. It took us over a year, but I finally, you see, the WVIAC was somewhat unique. It was the only athletic conference in the United States where every member team was from within the state. So for one school to leave the conference to go NCAA would tear it up. So I finally got enough of other college presidents to say, okay, you give it a shot. If you get West Liberty in the NCAA, we'll follow you. And there's enough of them that the whole conference had to go, or it was done with. So I remember Jim Watson and I, the national meeting was in Nashville. I remember going down to Nashville, and they had told me, you're going to have 5 minutes in front of the committee to explain your case. So we went down, and they took me in and said, okay, you got 5 minutes. Now, sitting at a table in front of me was Joe Paterno, Tom Osborne, who was a legendary football coach at the University of Nebraska, and who was the flamboyant head basketball coach at Notre Dame at that time. Well, I was dumbfounded. I was starstruck just seeing those guys. And they said, okay, you have 5 minutes. Tell us about West Liberty State College. Tell us why you want into the NCAA. I stumbled through my 5 minutes, and they excused me. Later in the day, I was contacted to come to the office, and they said, you're in. Well, we had to pay a little bit of money, but you are now a member of the NCAA. And the other presidents fulfilled their promise. They followed us into the NCAA, and when that happened, schools from out of state, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Virginia, North Carolina, wanted to be part of it, and that's where the what is the Mid-Eastern? Is that the Mountain Eastern Conference? That was its origin. And so we had enough schools that we were able to get the whole conference. A couple of presidents and coaches drug their heels, but we drug them in. And I consider that an accomplishment. The NCAA, I always liked that. A couple other things. We established for the first time in the late 80s and early 90s a foundation. For some reason, in his great wisdom, Paul Elvin did not see the need for additional money to run the institution beside the state allocation. In those days, I'll tell you, we were getting 80% of our budget coming from the state, and you're down to what, 22% now. But I could see that coming, and so I was able to get some interested people in the community to form the foundation, and it took us 2 years before we had enough money coming in that we were able to hire a director and have a development office. I don't know if any of you remember Jenny McIntyre. That was the first director, and she was here when we made our first $1 million. I always consider that as an accomplishment. In the beginning years, we made our first $1 million. So the foundation was, I felt, an accomplishment. Another thing I felt good about was the alumni. When I retired, we had close to 10,000 alumni names and addresses, and we had 10 national chapters from California to Connecticut to Texas. And the alumni, as I've expressed to Dr. Borchers, and I know John has heard me 100 times, are going to be the lifeblood of this institution, the alumni. So I always kind of felt good about that. And a couple other things. We started our first, besides dental hygiene, our first health-related program in nursing. And that was a battle. There were liberal arts people who said, no, that destroys the image of West Liberty as a liberal arts school when you start teaching vocational stuff. So we had a long drawn-out battle over that. And I don't want to mention Dr. Bainey is one of the opponents of that, so I won't mention his name. And and I'm sorry to take so long, but maybe my greatest sense of accomplishment was that 5,477 students were granted degrees while I sat in the president's chair. A couple other little things that people didn't know about. We bought the old Warwood High School. I went to the Board of Education when they closed it up and bought that. And we bought the old Kruger Street School out in Elm Grove, and we had a couple branch campuses. Then people didn't know about that, but they weren't. They were successful till the point when. And can I have just a couple more minutes? To the point where the community college was formed. You know, Paul Elvin and his great wisdom, and folks, make no mistake about it, this is Paul Elvin's school. He was head of the school for 35 years. He took it over. He was a professor of English. He took it over after World War I when it was headed downhill. And they said, we're going to keep it open one more year and you can be president. Well, he built it, the enrollment up so high that they said, oh, well, we'll give you another year. And then he took 34 more. But But he also, in his great wisdom, established 3 branch campuses, one in New Martinsville, one in Wheeling, and one in Weirton. They were very successful. They were very successful. In fact, at that point, counting the branch campuses, our full-time equivalent enrollment was over 4,000 at that point in time. And you see, in those days, there was no administrative level between the president and the legislature. There was no board of regents or no higher education council or whatever it's called now. Presidents could deal directly with legislators, and Paul Elbin was a master. It was nothing to see at least once or twice a month a group of 4 or 5 legislators being led by Dr. Elbin going around the campus. In 1970, our great legislative body said, we're going to start a system of community colleges in West Virginia. And they said, let's go up and look at West Liberty. They got some branch campuses. So they sent a special committee up, and I remember Jim Chapman told me, take these people around, show them our branch campuses. After we finished that tour, they said, you have a community college. And with a stroke of a pen, they took all 3 branch campuses, the buildings, the faculty, the students, the equipment, the supplies, everything was wiped away, and we never recovered. We never recovered from that. And I mentioned that only with regard to the fact that why did I mention that? I was going to the community college. Oh, so really, Paul Elbin was the father of West Virginia Northern Community College. The legislature took all of that from us and said, okay, now that's West Virginia Northern Community College. And they had, I forget, it was their 25 or 50-year celebration of their existence, and they invited me to say a few words. And I said this as kindly as I could, because they were talking about how they were formed and how hard they had worked to form the first community college in the state. And I told them, I said, folks, something to remember. Some people go through life thinking they hit a triple, and actually they were born on third base. That's the case with West Virginia Northern, and I don't mean to detract from them because it's a great school. They're serving our community very well. But Paul Elbin was the father of that as well. So I felt I should mention that as one. But that we've never recovered from that blow. I'm sorry, Sean. I'm sorry.
Clyde, I think even then were we not right on the verge, because we were as big or bigger than Marshall University, about the same size. And even though they were university, I think West Liberty was right on the verge of becoming the 3rd university clear back then. And I know you've mentioned before, you often wondered if somehow that didn't worm its way into the thinking that maybe West Virginia University and Marshall University didn't want a 3rd university. So that's one way you can do it, just cut West Liberty's enrollment by half.
What were some of your favorite accomplishments?
Other than working for President Campbell, that was about as good as it gets. A couple things. One, Teresa's right here, with Chris Lee and Rosie Miller, was Channel 14 and Topper Station, and all that Teresa's done since then. We were those guys worked real hard to get the FCC licensing, and we were the first one of the regional colleges, I don't even know WVU had a TV station to have its own TV station first in the state of West Virginia, right? Because I don't think WVU or Marshall did have. So that was the very first, and I didn't have anything to do with that, but we sure had good people that worked very hard to accomplish that. Even though university status was achieved a year and a half after I left, or 14 months after I left, I think the things we did in 2005, 6, 7 to get in place what needed to be done for West Liberty to achieve university status, and that dealt with credentialing of faculty. That again dealt with budgetary matters, but one of the major factors was credentialing of faculty. 3/4 of the faculty tenure track had to have terminal degrees, so we worked to upgrade that, along with the research and professional writings of faculty members. So the things that I think were put in place for West Liberty University to achieve university status, and also the platform for graduate programs. Our very first graduate program, first one, was in teacher education. Certainly the Highland Center, it's no more. Very, very sad about that. I could talk for the next 3 hours about the loss of the Highlands Center, because it did such a great job for a period of time. And Clyde set the foundation with that, with what was done at the Warwood Center and what was done at Kruger Street, but serving non-traditional students, serving working adults with our BLA program, our Master Professional Studies program, no longer in existence, and the number of students that have run into for over the years who wouldn't have gotten college education had not been for their ability to take the program, the courses at the Highlands Center. And my wife Rhonda was a manager out there for the first 2 years. Larry Williams, a friend of Clyde and mine, Larry was directly involved in that. Also want to mention, Clyde mentioned Jim Watson, outstanding athletic director. Jim was an outstanding athletic director. We were fortunate to have Jim in that role. Just a couple other things, Dr. Borchers, and this had nothing to do with gender, so it may sound like it's gender directed. It's not. It has to do with their performance, their credentials, their ability to do the job. I was happy to be able to appoint the first female college academic dean we had, Betsy Robinson, in business, and that was followed by Beth Musser in education, the first female provost, executive vice president of academic affairs, Donna Lukic. Donna did a great job. Don had been in nursing and worked with Clyde in establishing the nursing program, came up from Ohio Valley Medical Center, and say that had nothing to do with we need a female in that role. That had to do with they're the best. They had earned it. They should be there. Got kickback on that from some friends of mine who felt that we didn't necessarily have to have a woman in that role. Well, no, we didn't have to have a woman. We had to have the best person, and they were very simply they were the best individuals. Obviously, also ongoing technology, and that's something Clyde was involved in. Everybody involved in expanding technology on the campus. Every president has been involved in that. Dr. Borchers, you're involved in that certainly, and getting more technology in the classroom, which certainly has revamped and redirected much of classroom education today. But those are just a few of the things. I was there shorter period of time, but at least happy to be involved in that. Clyde also mentioned the foundation, which he's the one to establish it. And we've got foundation members here, and I'd like to thank them, and Betsy Delk and Sean and Kyle, Jenny, that team, and what a great job Jenny McIntyre did and Angie Zambito Hill did. And the foundation plays such a critical role in fundraising today. We couldn't operate without those private dollars. We couldn't exist without that presence. So the role that they play and the president plays increasingly in in fundraising.
So I'll ask one more before I turn it open to the audience. How did you foster a sense of community among the employees as well as the students? Fostering a sense of community on campus.
We went to everything. Joan and I, if there was a basketball game and a recital, we split. She'd go to the basketball game and I'd go to the recital, or was it the other way? You got just tried to learn students' first names. And I know John did this too. I taught a full course every semester. I was president, and I was able to relate to some of the problems that faculty had because I say, oh, yeah, it's a problem for me too. I went to faculty senate meetings. There were more times than not, they'd say, Dr. Campbell, do you mind excusing yourself for the rest of the meeting? We got some things we want to talk about. And so, but I went to the faculty senate meetings. I knew every faculty member by their first name and just integrated. And Joan was at my right hand the whole time, and she was just as significant as I was in integrating into the entire community, campus community. And it was a pleasure.
And that's how it's done. To be engaged, to participate, to let people know you've got their back, and three individuals right here, Patty, Arlene, Nancy. There may be others, can't see who all's in the crowd. So many quality men and women, faculty and staff, who were at West Liberty, and to let them know that and that's what Clyde did. Let them know we're all in this together. It's not a one guy, one gal show. We're in this thing together. And communicate that to people, not just to communicate it, but show it through your actions, through your deeds. Build that trust and rapport and a sense of integrity and honesty. And that's been, I'll be very blunt, that's been a tough run on this campus for the past 6-7 years. And when you don't have that, and that's what I loved about Clyde, you always had that sense of integrity and trust and honesty and forthrighteousness. And that's why, Dr. Borchers, the one phrase you have already heard many times and you will continue to hear, and we know you're fulfilling that, is breath of fresh air. And that breath of fresh air means that. It means restoring trust and integrity and honesty, personal honesty and fairness. And that's what you've already brought. You've already brought that. That's what Dr. Campbell had in his, all the positions he was in. That's what everyone tried to bring, and that's what had been missing on this campus for about 6-7 years. And you are restoring that, because that culture is a killer. If you go the other direction, that culture is a killer in terms of motivation, morale. You're going to have good people resigning, good people taking early retirement, quality people being terminated, and that can't go on. And I know Dr. Borcher's breath of fresh air, and we'll make those all caps, is what you have brought, and your engagement, and that's what it is. It's a matter of engagement. It's a matter of being involved and making sure that your actions match your words in everything that you do in dealing with the faculty, staff, students, donors, alumni.
Well, thank you.
Oh, could I interject? You said something that reminded me of something, John, and Dr. Borchers. This is a partial answer to your question. early in my tenure, there was a star quarterback. I want to say Joe Theismann. I know it was before Joe Montana. He played for San Francisco 49ers, but he was a star quarterback, you know, the leader of the team, the top man on the team. But he held the ball for the kicker when they kicked extra points and field goals. And a reporter said to him one time, you know, you're the star quarterback on the team. The whole team revolves around you. Why do you hold the ball up for the kicker? And he said, if I don't, it falls over. And I thought of that. That man provided the resources and the wherewithal for other people to do their jobs. So part of my thinking during my entire tenure, probably my main job was to provide the space, the facilities, the equipment, the supplies, the incentive to faculty, staff, and students to do their job, to provide the things that they need to do their job. And I kind of sprung off from what you said, John, but I'll quite honestly, that was sort of always in the back of my mind.
Absolutely. And as Clyde knows, as we all know in our positions, because not every request can be granted. Not every want can be satisfied, but to let people know, if that's the case, that there may be options, there may be alternatives out there that still can be explored. And I don't mean a false ray of hope, but a legitimate ray that maybe down the road, and this is what Clyde was like, that down the road, if we can't do it now, I think we can do that later. We'll have the resources to obviously fill that want, grant that particular request, and get the approval out there to provide that type of support, and not rely on can't do it as policy, can't do it as something like that, but to let people know you work with them to find some options and alternatives, some other avenues by which something can be accomplished that they're interested in.
What questions do you have?
Shoot, I didn't want to talk in the microphone. Okay. But I had the good fortune of working here at West Liberty during both of their presidencies. So relating to your question to them, both of these men made the employees feel like they were part of the fabric of West Liberty University. You never felt less than. What I experienced from both of them and observed from both of them was they knew the employee's name. If they saw you out on campus, they knew you, they knew who you were, they knew your name, they knew what you did, and they always made you feel like what you did here was important. You had an important role, and they appreciated that. And I think that went a long way to see why people felt the way and still feel the way today about how they feel about both of these former presidents. So thank you for that, because that has stayed with me forever.
Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you.
And Dr. Borchers, I think something that you are working to return, terms we used all the time was a sense of family, a sense of community, and those weren't just words. We believed it and we lived it, and that was the culture for many, many years on this campus.
Another question.
So Being up there as esteemed presidents of West Liberty University, I'm just curious as to what West Liberty means to you today and if that has changed over time.
What West Liberty means to us today, having been presidents, Clyde, what West Liberty means to us today, has it changed over time? It's here are two individuals. This is pretty much our lives. Clyde and I, our adult lives have been here, and the term investment is used lots of times. Well, what an investment? We got it back in kind. Thousands of students and all those that we get to see, many in this room right here, their families, their careers, their contributions to community, their support for improved quality of life. That's what it's all about. And I think a belief in West Liberty that is unwavering. And I'm not a local. I'm from Illinois. I was born and reared in Illinois, and but my feelings. This is home. This is home. This is a real hospitable home. And Clyde's been here even as an alum, even longer, many more years than I have. And I know my feelings haven't changed at all, Clyde, about the importance of West Liberty.
Oh, I love the school. I love the school. I left 3 times and came back 3 times. As I said before, I could not have gone to college. There was not enough money in my family to send me to college. My father said, when I was in junior high, he said, son, if you want to go to college, you go start saving your money. And I know I'd earn a quarter cutting grass or something, and he'd say, you ought to save that now. And I'd think to myself, what the hell am I going to do with a quarter? And I'd go get ice cream or something with it and said, I'll figure that out later. And in fact, when I graduated from high school, there was no money. So I worked for a year before I was able to save up enough money to commute from Warwood to come to West Liberty. I graduated from West Liberty and left. Went away to school. And then when I finished my schooling, at Dr. Elbin's invitation, I came back. And I did have an opportunity to work in industry. And frankly, that was truthfully, that was, I said to Dr. Albin, I can't work 3 days out of 4. We taught for 9 months, and then 3 months was a vacuum. I said, I can't do that. So I left for a few years and went and worked into industry, and then I came back again. And I did that 3 times. I did it till I got it right. And came back. But I love this school. And I'll tell you something else. I was in college for 9 years. Kind of a slow learner for 9 years. But I had teachers here to which some of the teachers I had in the leading universities at North Carolina and West Virginia University couldn't hold a candle to them. I had teachers here who were far greater, far more knowledgeable, far better able to convey that knowledge to students than teachers at leading nationally recognized universities. I love this place. I love this place. I like to say, I don't say it to anyone, say it to myself, I think I was in every room in every building on this campus, including the dormitories. I love every inch of it. And we were a family. We were a family. Thank you.
And that, Clyde, is what he mentioned about the teachers. Some of the best, some of the we've lost a lot of them in recent years, but some of the very best we still have today, some of the very best, because if you're here, you want to teach. You want to teach, you want to interact with the students, and I will just doubly endorse what Clyde said about the quality of teachers that we had and that we do have today, and staff, the support backbone of everything, top drawer staff individuals. It makes it a pleasure. By the way, I want to mention when Clyde's in fact, I had a question to ask Clyde when Clyde was in industry. You had a patent, didn't you, Clyde? I think Clyde had a patent. Clyde had about 30 or 40 patents when he was in industry, and then came back here. So that's who we're dealing with. What he brought to the chemistry lab and department and all. Yep.
Well, I think that was a good note to end on. So let's give President Campbell and President McCullough a big round of applause for their time today.
Thank you. Thank you.
And please join us in the Nutting Gallery for a reception. And if you're available, we're having a Brew Keepers alumni reunion down in Wheeling tonight from 5 to 7. So a great way to cap off the week and get us ready for Topper Day of Giving tomorrow. So thank you. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you.